Hey, what's up, reefers? Today we're going to talk about my favorite corals, the Frogspawn. So in my tank, I have the two most common colomorph, the green tip Frogspawn on the left hand side, and the purple tip Frogspawn on the right hand side. Let me swing them around real quick. So there are other colomorphs like the Australian gold, and there's also even rainbow Frogspawn, which is super cool. Now, besides colomorph, they have different growth pattern too. If you look over here, I have the branching type of Frogspawn. There's also a wall type. So essentially, instead of like multiple branches, it would just be like one big wall of structure. The branching type is a lot easier to frag and to place versus the wall one. The wall one, in terms of like care, they're about the same. It's just that with the wall, when you frag them, right, you risk infection. So a little bit, you need to have clean water. It's a little bit more demanding. So there are many different corals that look similar to Frogspawn. You can identify the Frogspawn by looking at each tentacle, right? There will be multiple tips similar to this. So for example, the torch or the hammer, they will only have one tip per tentacle. And in hammer's case, the tentacle is shaped like a hammer. So that's why it's called hammer. Now, besides the Frogspawn, hammer, and the torch, there's also the, I think it's called octocoral. It looks really similar to the Frogspawn, except it has even more tips. And those are a little bit more rare in this hobby. So, the Frogspawn is considered really beginner-friendly corals. They're known as LPS, meaning large stony corals. Oh man, that's bad. No, LPS stands for large polyp stony. Because like, they have a structure. They have a hard structure with like one single flesh polyp per structure. Oh man. And they're considered an easy coral because they're not that demanding. In terms of light, they prefer low to medium lights, which most reef tank would have. And in terms of flow, they prefer low to medium flow. Now, the lower the flow, the larger the polyp becomes because they'll take on water to inflate themselves, but at the cost of the color. Meaning that the fatter each polyp is, there's more space between tissue, and with that more space, the color pigments got kind of like diffused. So if you want your Frogspawn to have a more intense color, maybe up the flow, not so much that the polyp do not expand, but enough that it doesn't really expand too much. So I'm still kind of tweaking with how much flow I should have for this tank. And that is certainly the case for the Frogspawn. Like, if the flow is a little bit higher, it will kind of compact itself similar to what it's doing right now. In exchange, the color is a little bit more intense, especially the dark parts, which I really like. I like that contrast. And I've noticed that if I dial down the water flow, within a day or two, it will get really, really large, really fat, right? It'll take up a lot of room, looks impressive, but the color is not as intense. Now, Frogspawn, even though it's like a beginner coral, reefers love them. Because, I mean, it looks great, they're easy to frag, easy to trade, and they grow relatively fast, meaning that if you want to fill your tank up with something, right, that's not a soft coral, Frogspawn would be a really great choice. Just look at this, you know, it takes up the space really well. So until I'm sure which direction my tank is going with, the Frogspawn is staying there. In the future, if I do decide to go with SPS, I may start fragging the Frogspawn, start trading it off for frags, and slowly replacing the top with SPS, which is a lot slower growing. And in my previous, I would say 5 tanks, I've always have at least one small colony of Frogspawn in there because they look impressive, you know, from a distance. You see one big colony of stuff, it just kind of draws you in. It's easy to maintain. They thrive in most condition, and they're easy to frag. You cannot really ask for a nicer coral than this. So again, that's why Frogspawn is one of my favorite corals. So this is just like a general overview of the Frogspawn corals. If you have more specific questions, feel free to leave comments, and I'm sure either I or other reefers who knows more than me will be able to help you answer. Oh, in terms of getting Frogspawn, I would say don't spend so much money at local fish store. Like I mentioned before, a lot of reefers they have Frogspawn in the tank because seriously, everybody loves Frogspawn, and chances are you may find some for sale at your local reef clubs, and the price is a lot better than local fish store in general, in terms of, at least for Frogspawns. Yeah, as you notice, my clownfish actually swims it from time to time. So sometimes when your clownfish is not willing to host an enemy you got, for example, right here, this guy, they may go into the Frogspawn. So it also makes for a really good surrogate host for clownfish. One thing to keep in mind with Frogspawn is that they do have a sting. Let me see if it's sending out stingers. Like this guy, the purple tip, you see how one of the tentacle is a little bit longer? So those are sweeper stinger. Maybe it's detecting some coral nearby, maybe it does not like those zoas. It's sending out sweepers like that to kind of sting the corals around the area to kind of push them back. And Frogspawn supposedly have a pretty potent sting. My skin is pretty thick. So far I haven't really noticed too much, but a lot of reefers say that if they brush up against Frogspawn while they're cleaning the tank, especially in like area of your hand where it's like a little bit with like thinner skin, for example, like your inner arms, you know, then sometimes they'll get rash. So that's something to keep in mind. Just be careful when you're working near Frogspawns. They do sting. But otherwise, perfect beginner for corals, and just perfect corals in general. It's one of my top corals. Alright, just a quick overview for Frogspawn. Hope this has been helpful. I'll see you guys next time.